So tonight we're going to talk about confrontation, which is always fun. I did share a bit about this on Friday night, so if you were here Friday night for the Lift group training, it is quite similar, but I've added a little bit more in there just to suit this kind of context a bit better. But I guess in setting this whole subject up, Nate and I really want to equip our leaders to deal with confrontation themselves. Like, we often find that the pastors or the leaders above the people dealing with the confrontation get pulled into it just because leaders don't feel empowered to actually deal with confrontation. So we really want to set you guys up to be able to deal with it because it doesn't always need our attention. So that's why we're going to have this chat tonight. But obviously when we do deal with confrontation, it's because we care for the person. So when we need to confront someone, we've got to make sure that we are doing it with care, and that it is a form of care because it's bidding a person to grow. There's part of the confrontation is that there's something that needs to change, and so we do that, we approach that in a caring way. And so tonight I'm just going to share a few tips about how we can prepare for confrontation, like we can prepare ourselves and you know, how we want to carry ourselves during it, and then just some real practicals that will help help make it as successful as possible, as smooth as possible. But so obviously we're talking in the context of leadership here, but confrontation can be used, you know, in your friendships, in your marriages, in your workplace. It can be used everywhere and anywhere because confrontation will always come up. So to kick this off, I'm just going to talk about in the preparation kind of stage of confrontation. So I find that a lot of the time especially Christians, we can really chicken out when it comes to confrontation because we're supposed to be nice, right? We're not supposed to really like... Yeah, we're not supposed to be...
I'm showing that we are not.
He's going against the grain, it's good. We're not supposed to be making waves with people, you know, so I find that when it comes to confrontation, we can talk ourselves out of it. And so I just want to bust a few of those... I guess things that we do tonight, and please take it as I'm speaking to myself as well. I definitely have done confrontation wrong, and I definitely want to grow. My iPad's not cooperating with me. Okay, never mind. All right, so just to... Oh, genius. Thanks. Yeah, that's why. So skilled, especially when it comes to Apple products. Yeah.
I'm a genius.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that, so thank you. You taught me something. Cool. So when we're preparing to confront someone, I have three little, tips to help us in that kind of stage. And so instead of talking ourselves out of confronting someone, let's ask ourselves, when should we go? So Matthew chapter 5, verse 21 to 24, and Matthew 18, 15 to 20, teaches us when we should go and confront. So Matthew 5 is actually talking about when we have wronged a person, and then Matthew 18 talks about when a person has wronged us. And in both of those situations, when do we go and confront a person? It's immediately, and we always confront the person. So it's not if, it's we do. We always do. So in all cases of confrontation, it's good to take the first step every time. Whether you've been wronged or whether you have wronged someone, it's still your responsibility to take that step of confronting. Okay, so that's when should we go? We should always go. So why should we go? What is the motivation of confrontation? So the motivation, and we see this in Romans 18, I believe it is. Romans 12, verse 18, sorry. So the motivation of confronting someone is to be at peace with that person. So it's always to be reconciled with that person. And so, just unpacking that a bit, being at peace with someone, it says to live at peace with someone. That basically means that you're able to be in the same room with them and there's peace. It's all good. You don't awkwardly go past them. You don't awkwardly avoid them, because that's not being at peace with someone. So I don't know, like as I'm talking tonight, maybe there's some things and some people that are going to come to mind where you're like, okay, I can't actually be in the same room with that person. Maybe there's something there. One of the motivations is to be reconciled with that person, to live at peace with that person. And secondly, confrontation should be done if it's helpful for both of the parties. So if you actually really take a step back out of the scenario and what's going on, if you believe honestly that confrontation is going to help both you and that person you need to confront, then fantastic, go for it. That's a healthy way to do it. But if you're finding that, okay, I think the problem is probably more on my end. I think there's something that, that grates against me about that person, but they haven't actually done anything wrong, then that's a good opportunity to ask yourself and to check yourself, okay, what's that in me that's getting so, riled up or so annoyed with this person? And so that's a good opportunity for you to check yourself, check your heart. Cool. So those are the motivations, to be reconciled, and also the motivation is if it's helpful for both the parties. So the third thing, how should I go? So the Bible also teaches us to go directly. Now it's really funny because in the world and for Christians, we tend to go to anyone and everyone except for the person that we actually need to confront. And I'm totally guilty of this, all right? So don't worry. But the Bible does teach us to go directly. And, if you're kind of waiting on it, sitting on it, and talking to multiple people about it instead of talking to that person, that's also a good time to step back and say, okay, why am I actually procrastinating about this? Why am I holding this off? What's the deal here? So go directly. And then the second thing with how you should go is go after having repented and in humility. So repentance really just means changing your mind. So it's the whole thing of checking yourself and then seeing the person you need to confront. So making sure that there's no logs in your eye, and once that's been cleared, then you can go and take the splinter out of that person's eye. And obviously in humility, that's because we need grace as well, and we're not the judge, God is the judge. So it's important to remember that, and I think more often than not we do, but sometimes the way that we carry ourselves during confrontation can make us feel like we're condemning the person instead of going humbly into it. Cool, so that's how to prepare for confrontation. Now, just some practicals to help us, navigate the actual confrontation. So the first thing is to normalise and expect confrontation and truth. So not confrontation by itself, but truth needs to be coupled with confrontation. So first thing that I think would be really awesome for us as leaders to have is to have those people in our lives that actually challenge us to confront when necessary, not to just pick fights, but to have that accountability. Really, it is accountability in our life. I know for Nate and myself, if I'm, if Nate's like, okay, you've been talking about what this person's done for a long time now, I think, you should deal with it. I think you should do something about it. Like, he's a really good accountability for me. So I think it's just wise. What? Do you want to say that again?
No. No confronting right now.
I don't know what you said. Anyway, so having that accountability will help us to, just really normalise confrontation in our life. Also, if you normalise confrontation, then you'll find it easier to have the courage to confront each other in healthy ways. So if the more normal we can make it, the more it's easier to do, obviously. And we're testing that out with the whole invitation to people to have conversations about Jesus, about God, and coming to Lift. We're testing those waters out, and hopefully that will get easier over time, the whole invitation thing. And so it's the same with having courage to confront. You just got to keep on doing it. And it also helps you to reject. So confrontation also helps you to reject unhealthy habits like passivity, people-pleasing, or rescuing. So we know that those habits actually steal from the truth being able to be planted and grow, those habits really steal from it. So by confronting and having the courage to do that, we're actually putting away those bad habits. But most importantly, we realise that confrontation is nothing to be afraid of. And if we do it in a healthy way, people confront and then they move on, and the relationship doesn't have to be broken. If anything, it's actually strengthened after confrontation. So that's the first thing. Normalise and expect confrontation and truth. So the second thing, really practical, but make it a sit-down conversation. Give the confrontation the time it needs to be properly talked through so that each party has been given the space to give their perspective. There's nothing worse than being talked at, and I think if you've ever been talked at, you know, like you just feel like you haven't been respected, you feel like you haven't been heard, and so make sure that you put in that time with that person to actually be able to sit down and hear them out. Confrontation will often take a few steps before being thoroughly worked through, so you need that time, and I'll just talk about those few steps shortly. So that's the second thing, make sure it's a sit-down conversation. The third thing, when confronting, address patterns, not isolated events. So this looks like watching out for patterns that cause obvious problems in a person's relationship with others. So even if you're kind of a bit not sure, then I'd say definitely pray and kind of sit on it rather than just confronting and you've got no real grounds to that confrontation. So watch out for patterns. So what this doesn't mean is policing or confronting a person whenever they do something wrong. And also, like, if you've been subject to that, you know that you tend to not listen to that person after a while because they just pick on everything that you do. So, for example, I'll just give a bit of an example of how this would work. Say you're at a lift group starting in February 2016, and say, you know, you're having a really great conversation with the group, but someone, time and time again, and over a few weeks, actually continues to interrupt the conversation. They just don't let people finish their sentence. They just, you know, always cutting people off. And so if they do it once, what do? You let it go because it's not a habit, it's not a pattern yet. But if they continue to do it, that's when you need to confront, that's when you need to talk about it. It's a pattern and it's affecting the people in the room and their relationships. So that's when we confront. And a great way to do it is to give the person the benefit of the doubt. So you can say things like, I don't know if you are aware of this, but, and sometimes when it comes to, so that's for this example where you're pointing out something that they do, and you know, you may be affected by it, but a group of people could be affected by it. But if it's something that's really quite personal, how you can approach it, how you can kind of word it, giving people the benefit of the doubt is, hey, when you said this, I felt this way. Or, you know, I really don't think this was your heart, or I don't think you were intending to hurt, but what you said then hurt me in this way. So yeah, just phrasing it a little bit different. And it really disarms the person as well when you're talking about, I guess, you're struggling with it as well. So, cool. So when confronting, address patterns, not isolated events. So the fourth thing, speak with no condemnation and no equivocation. So, the funny thing about condemnation is that it can cause a person to withdraw from the support that they actually need to overcome that problem. And so if we come in with condemnation, we're actually pushing them back from being able to open up and express how they're going, and for us to be able to help them. And we all know that we need grace, so it's important that we maintain the posture of no condemnation, but that we are wanting to listen, we're wanting to hear their part. But then at the same time, when confronting, we need to be direct and not ambiguous about the concern. I know that I've been in conversations where I feel like I've just been so ambiguous and so like beating around the bush that the person's walked away, and I'm like, I don't even know if I actually addressed the problem or not, you know? Like, they could walk away and be like, I don't know what that was about. I don't know what I'm supposed to change, you know? So not being ambiguous, but at the same time, not being condemning as well. So the fifth thing, make sure there is a redeeming action plan. That word redeeming is very important. So when confrontation is taking place, it requires an entreatment of change in the person. So really when you confront, you're bidding the person to change. And so change includes confession of sin, repentance, which again, a change of mind, and restoration back to the relationship. So sometimes the action plan is enough for the person to change. So that confession of sin, repentance, and that restoration of relationship, usually that's enough. But sometimes if the sin is so, deeply rooted, it will take that person some time to explore and to just find that healing. But that confrontation should kickstart that process anyway. So the sixth thing, put in effective boundaries and or consequences depending on the nature of the confrontation. So the problem or sin has been addressed now, the person's point of view has been understood, support and resources have been offered, but now boundaries and consequences have to be established. And they're established so then the sin can be scrutinised and limited, so it's not ignored in the future. And I guess people, some people who don't have those boundaries, they can actually take advantage of people again because they haven't dealt with that sin. And so it's really important to have those boundaries put in place, and sometimes it could be for you, the person who's doing the confronting. You might have to put some boundaries in your own life where it guards you, it guards your heart, so that you don't have to be put in that place with that person again, that place of hurt. And just a tip with that, each party does need to make their own boundaries, because imposing boundaries doesn't work. Like you giving a set of boundaries to someone else, it doesn't work. They often break them, but it's a good opportunity to go away and get yourselves thinking about what boundaries you want to put in, and then come back together and have a conversation about it. And you will have those serious cases as well of where the person, they're not wanting to change, and in those situations, it can get really hard because you feel like maybe you have to actually stop the friendship, your relationship can't go any further, and that isn't a nice place to be in. I've been in that place before, but I was stronger for it afterwards. Like I got out of that friendship, and I could deal with self-esteem and so it was good afterwards. But you can always talk to a mentor or someone that you trust about it, and just use them as a sounding board, bounce the scenario off them, and see what they think. It's always good to get that third perspective, I guess, that third party perspective. Those are some. I know they're really quick, but just because of time. So I hope they help. I know they're going to help. I know they've already helped me. Enjoy.